Hey guys, put it away.
Caption
yes.
YouTube drama.
Yeah, I know. So yes, we're going to talk about money. We are going to try to not make this too boring because we're not talking about the fun part, which is the making so much. We're talking about the saving.
That's right. At the beginning of 2019, I promised myself that I would do some things to get outside of my comfort zone. Hi.
Hi.
I think speaking in front of 350 people is definitely, that counts.
Yes,
that counts.
it counts. So today we're going to talk about, does your money have a purpose? And if it doesn't, we're going to tell you how to improve your lifestyle through giving it that purpose and making your money work for you. Now you guys are pretty awesome. This is a cool audience because you're already creating your own rules. You're kind of already thinking outside the box. So we don't really have to get you to think outside of society's expectations. But you may still be thinking, retirement is what happens when you hit 60 or 65, and you need millions of dollars in the bank to make it happen. And we're here to tell you that that's not necessarily true. I mean, it wasn't for us.
We're 35 and we're not millionaires.
No, we are not. We know countless people in what a community we're part of called the FIRE community who have gained financial freedom, retired early if that's what they wanted, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s from all sorts of income levels, family situations, and jobs. So you can create your own rules and gain financial freedom sooner rather than later than you might have thought. But what is financial freedom?
It looks a lot like a cat with a crown with buried himself in Mexican pesos.
Yes.
That is
That's
financial
our life,
freedom.
To say. No, financial freedom is never having to worry about money. Let me say that again. It's never having to worry about money. It's making big life decisions without finances being the #1 consideration.
It's not necessarily about quitting your job. Even though we happen to go that route,
yes.
You do not have to quit don't feel obligated that early retirement is a part of financial freedom, because it absolutely does not have to be.
Everyone, in our opinion, most likely wants financial freedom. Does that not sound good, not having to worry about money? Yeah. And there's different levels of that, and we'll talk about the different levels of financial freedom and how you can work towards it. But first, let's talk a little bit about us.
Yes, so we both come from technology backgrounds. I'm 37 now, and I guess I was around 30. I was living in a house in the suburbs to the south of Tucson. I made good money. Like I said, I was in IT. And this one morning, I was walking out into my garage, and I had every intention of just opening up the garage door and leaving. But for some reason, as I reached up to open up that garage door, I stopped. I just stopped. And then I took a look around in my garage, and I surveyed everything that was in there. So let me paint the picture. On the left, I had my red Cadillac CTS. On the right, I had my 1999 supercharged Corvette. And right in the middle, I had a 1000cc Yamaha R1 sport bike.
Can we say boys and their toys? Yeah.
Yes. And that was the first day that I finally allowed myself to ask a very simple question. So what? Just because I have all these toys, I still didn't feel like I was happy, or there was something missing in my life. I wasn't exactly sure what that was. But even with all this stuff, the house in the suburbs, the cars, the motorcycle, why is there something missing? I couldn't figure that out.
And meanwhile, he hated what he did. I don't know if anyone else works in IT, but in general, you're not generally the most well-liked person. Most people call you when they're very upset. And so
when there's a problem.
Yeah. So he did not like his job. So he was spending most of his life, most of the time, working at a job he hated for these toys that he thought would make him happy, and he's realizing they're not. I have a little bit different story. I liked my job. I'm trained as an aerospace engineer. I liked what I did. And I saved money. I was a good saver. I just didn't really have anything big to save for. So I saved what I was supposed to. I lived. I was generally content until we were given other options. So we met each other. We realized now 2 salaries, pretty good incomes. We can do a lot with this. We could have those crazy vacations. We could do whatever really we want. Or we could, save 70% of it. That's 70% of it. And quit our jobs and be financially free and have the freedom to choose our futures from then on out.
Yeah, that picture you see of the Corvette on the top left, that was actually my car. I drove out to the middle of the desert, south of Tucson, and got that picture.
Yeah. And then
on
our
the
new
lower
lives.
right was our first day picking up our Airstream after we made all of these changes that we're going to talk about. That was our first day with our Airstream.
Yeah. So we have you only live once up there because obviously in this community you're here because you want to live now. You want to get out on the road now. You don't want to wait and put it off because who knows what's going to happen in the future. We consider financial freedom YOLO for your entire life. It's the ultimate YOLO because it's you only live once forever, like as long as you have. So that's why we put the YOLO up there. Okay.
There are 3 stages of life for the majority of us. So the learning phase, you're still young, you're not really responsible for making a living or taking care of yourself. You're learning how things go, you're learning how you operate, how the world operates, and kind of how you fit in. Around high school, maybe college, you start to transition into that gray area where you now are responsible for earning a living, making money, taking care of yourself and your families. And that's really the accumulation phase where you're taking in all this money, hopefully, and putting it to use in a way that makes sense. And ultimately, everything we do in the accumulation phase is to set us up for the next phase, which is retirement or the post-accumulation phase, where we actually get to begin living on all of that work that we put in during the previous phase.
Yes, and we like the post-accumulation phase better. It's just long and we didn't want to put it on the slide. Because most people, when they think retirement, think of that picture. So you're of typical retirement age and you're sitting on a bench enjoying the sunset and not really doing anything. But we still do a whole lot. And it's the time period when you no longer have to necessarily support your day-to-day lives with money you earn right now.
Yeah, retirement's really a bad word. It's really more about financial independence or financial freedom rather than retirement.
Now, like I said, you guys, awesome, because already creating your own rules, already thinking outside the box, nothing new there. But many of you are probably thinking, okay, but we want to be entrepreneurs, or we are entrepreneurs, and we have made this major life decision to move into an RV, and that meant giving up full-time jobs. That means trying to figure out how we're going to make a living on the road. And here you are talking about like retirement and stuff that I can't even think about right now. That is true, but like I said, YOLO, you have to think about YOLO as your entire life. And while you don't know how long that's going to be, hopefully it'll be quite a long time for everyone in this room. And so you need to make sure that your financial future is as good as your present. And that third stage of life is not the time to run out of money, because it's the time when it's going to be really difficult to make that up. So that's what we were going to say about that. Okay, I think there's going to be a whole talk on what's your why later on, but this is specifically for saving money. It is not easy to save money when you can spend it now. It's also not as much fun. We know this. What you really need to have in order to do any major life decision, make any big change, is a really good reason why. Something that keeps you going through all of the hard times, through all those decisions.
And this was really my problem in the garage. I didn't know what the problem was at the time, but now I do. I did not have a reason to save. I always save the bare minimum, like the 4%, the company match, which we'll also talk about later. But there wasn't that carrot in the distance. There wasn't a retirement or a financial independence or this or that. Yeah, there wasn't a main goal that I was saving for. So therefore, I didn't have a lot of reason to save.
Yeah.
So once you give yourself that why, it's going to be so much easier to save because you're saving specifically for something that's tangible that you're working towards.
And his why? Never have to work for someone else again.
Boom.
Right? That was pretty much, if he didn't have to go into an office and work for someone else again, that was his why. It was worth anything for him. That wasn't my why because I liked my job, like I said. My why was the freedom. I couldn't do my job from the road. I was in a windowless room most of the time. The freedom to travel and the freedom to see everything I wanted to see and not be locked down into a daily routine. That was kind of my why. But your why could be different. It may not be financial independence or financial freedom. It might be saving enough to get this business off the road or to buy this RV you want or to get out of debt. Whatever your why is, and it's going to be different between couples and in families, please try to figure out what that is and what really speaks to you, because that's what's going to make this whole process easier. I know it's a graph. I'm sorry, it's like the only one. I think there's one other. It's not that bad. We're going to talk about the magic of compound interest. Now, as a trained rocket scientist, I didn't even really understand this until my late 20s, early 30s, and I wish this was taught in elementary school because it would have just blown my mind. So let's do an example. Let's say you're lucky enough to have $1,000 to save for 50 years. How much money are you going to have at the end of the 50 years?
$50K.
$50K. If you're saving it under a mattress, that is 100% true.
What if it's a king-size mattress?
It's still, no, it's not going to work. However, the magic of compound interest is if you invest in one of these savings methods we're going to talk about here in a little bit, your money will grow in on itself. So not only is your money you just put in, that $1,000, going to earn interest, but the interest is going to earn interest. And it's just going to continue to grow over time. So that same scenario, you're saving $1,000 a year for 50 years. If you're putting it in something that has a 5% saving interest rate, you're ending up with $220,000 at the end of that 50 years. That's $170,000 more than what you actually had to save. You just earned $170,000 by saving it not under your mattress. So that is the magic of compound interest. That is why interest rates make such a big deal. Because the earlier you start, even with a very small amount of money, the $1,000 was just an example, but the earlier you start and the longer you let it grow, the more money you're going to have at the end. Your money is going to be growing and building for you.
Absolutely. So when we say savings, what do we mean here? Well, there's so many different ways to save, like there's savings accounts, money market accounts, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, has savings accounts. There's a lot of different options to save your money. There's two options, though, that I want to make sure that we talk about as examples of what not to do. The mattress, like we've already said, and really the checking account. The checking account is not your savings method. I will repeat that. Your checking account is not your savings method. It's basically a digital mattress. And the reason why we say that is because your money does not grow in a checking account. It grows when it's invested. Even savings accounts, as low of an interest rate as they may give you, provide at least a return on your money. So your checking account, just like your mattress, is not where you save your money.
It also is a little too easy to access that money. If we have too much money in the checking account, that can be a little bit dangerous.
Yes.
Keep it in the savings.
So attention, we have to say this, we are not certified financial planners, we're not CPAs. What we're telling you here is we didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. We don't play a certified financial planner on TV. What we're telling you is how we did this, how we retired in our mid-30s, and how this information works for a lot of people, but we still have to give you that warning.
Yeah, so take everything we say as that. Okay, we're going to go through those savings methods we talked about super quickly, just to give you like an idea, and that way you can look it up more later. Savings accounts. I'm hoping everyone here knows what savings accounts are. They're really good for short-term savings. Number one thing we would like everyone to take away from this is if you do not have an emergency fund, which is a perfect place to have an emergency fund is a savings account, please consider putting money towards an emergency fund.
Yes, if you lose your job tomorrow or you no longer make a dime starting tomorrow, how long can you go without having to worry about money?
Or you're injured, or someone you know is injured, something happens. How long can you go before money is like taking over your life and you can't actually pay attention to the most important thing, which is your family, your friend, yourself, whatever that is.
That's essentially your emergency fund. So if you're not in 3 to 6 months, that's fine. You don't have to beat yourself up. Just start now and build to that point to provide a lot more flexibility going forward.
Exactly. And 3 to 6 months is what we recommend. You may have heard $1,000 from Dave Ramsey. There's all different things out there. This is specifically more for the RVing sect because you also have to deal with the fact that your home may break down and you may have a lot of emergency fund spending that you need to do quickly in order to just like live and get back on the road. So that is why we're recommending 3 to 6 months of whatever your living expenses are. Now, quick thing about savings accounts, they're much easier to get now than they used to be. They don't have to be connected to the checking account in the same bank that you have. In fact, many times it's better to go outside that bank because you can get better interest rates. A lot of savings accounts, including the one that we currently use, have 2 to 3% interest, which is quite high. If your savings account is not earning at least 2% interest, consider moving money because your money could be sitting there earning you money more than it is right now. And that's pretty easy, right? It's free money. It's just sitting there.
And for the record, we use Ally.
Yeah. We're not sponsored by anybody we talk about. We're just going to give you what we have. When we say short-term savings, for us, short-term means the next 5 years. So I know that doesn't seem super short, but the other methods of savings we're going to talk about have some risk to them, and they are good for long-term investments, but you don't want to have to worry about pulling money out when you have a bad market. Savings accounts are safe as long as they're insured by the FDIC, and so anything you're planning to save for in the next 5 years, a savings account is a good thing to have that money in. Retirement accounts. So we talked about short-term. This is like super long-term for some people. And many of you have probably heard retirement accounts and think, why should I save for that when I can't even really live the way I want to right now? One, they're tax advantaged, which means they will, in some cases, decrease the amount of taxes you are paying right now, which is helpful. And like we said, that time period when you're older and you don't have as many opportunities is not a good time to run out of money. It's not a good time to lose the freedom that you've had the rest of your life.
And in the case of a 401k, your company might actually match. If you work for a traditional company, a lot of them give you a match. So let's say it's very common to have a 3 or 4% match of your salary in your traditional 401k. So if you contribute 4% into your 401k, your company will also contribute, if they offer this service, 4% of that same money, but it's coming out of your company's coffers.
Not yours.
Into your retirement account.
If you don't match.
Yeah, that is quite literally free money.
Yeah. If you don't match, you're pretty much saying, thanks, I'm good, I don't need any more money, I'm good, I don't need
So if you do not know whether your company offers this or not, definitely ask. Because, I mean, all they can do is say no. But if they say yes, that's free money every single year.
Yes. So 401ks are sponsored by companies. IRAs and Roth IRAs are things that you can set up yourself. Slightly different. IRAs, you put money in pre-tax like a 401k. It grows tax-free. And then when you take it out after typical retirement ages, you pay taxes on it then. Roth IRA, you invest money post-tax, and it grows tax-free, and then when you take it out at typical retirement age, you don't pay any taxes on it. So you're paying taxes now, not then when taxes might be higher.
Yeah, chances are taxes are going to be higher in the future than they are now. Does anybody disagree with this? Probably not. So the benefit is you're paying taxes now, but you won't pay taxes when they're 5, 10, whatever % higher.
Exactly. Those other ones I have listed up there, they're specific for entrepreneurs. They're similar to 401ks and IRAs for people who have just themselves as the only employee or their spouse or a few other employees. So it is something to look into. It might be a good situation if you have a small business to look into something like this. There are tax advantages, but there are also a lot of things you need to know with the IRS, and we have not done those, so we're not going to say much on those. But they are options out there. Brokerage account. So we talked about short-term, 5 years. We talked about long-term, retirement, typical age. There's the middle ground. So people always ask us, like, how did we retire? How did we quit our jobs? What are we living off of? We can't touch those retirement accounts until we are in our 60s. Not completely true. There are ways to transfer money before that without fees. But what we did is that we actually maxed out our 401ks.
Yes, for the last 2 years, we devoted the max, which was $17,500 at the time.
Yep.
I believe it's $18,000 now, but don't quote me on that, check on that. But I believe it's $18,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now.
And then all the extra money we had after that, everything we were saving went towards a brokerage account. So these are pretty much, they're like the retirement accounts, they're just not tax advantaged. So there's no tax advantages to them, but the main reason they're good is because you're going to get a higher interest rate. So we said 2 to 3% for a savings account. I'm not going to tell you what this is because people will be like, they're all over what they think the stock market actually gives.
Returns,
but normally it's a lot more than 2 to 3% in the long term. And we do mean long term. So yes, there are stock market crashes. Yes, there are recessions. But in the long run, over the course of the history of the stock market, you will make out and make more money than if you had it in a different savings method, as long as you are willing to be flexible and not take money out when it's a down market. So for instance, we have our money in our brokerage accounts. We withdraw some money every year from that. However, if the market is down, we have extra money in our savings accounts right now, because like I said, 5 years. And we will take money from our savings accounts rather than pull from our brokerage accounts, our stocks, our dividends, or whatever, in order to let it continue growing, because you don't want to pull money out when the market's low, if you can help it.
HSAs are a hidden gem
Yes.
that not a lot of people take advantage of. I made a huge mistake of not taking advantage of an ASA when I was working a full... What?
Nothing. Keep going.
I made a huge mistake by not taking advantage of an HSA when I was working full-time.
Yes. So you need to have a high-deductible health plan to be eligible to contribute to an HSA. There is talk that that may change, but that is a limitation. There are also limitations on how much money you can put into them. But pretty much this is like a Roth... no, it's more like an IRA. You put money into this account. You can invest it any way you want. It could be a savings account. It could be in the market. And you put it in pre-tax, it grows tax-free, and then as long as you're withdrawing it for a qualified medical expense, you never pay taxes on the money. So it's growing in whatever form you're putting it in, 2 to 3%, 6%, 8%, depending on what you've invested it in. And anytime you have any kind of medical problem, or you just want to pay the money up to your deductible, like pay your deductible up until you're covered with the rest of your health insurance, you can use this money for that, for the rest of your life. If you get to typical retirement age and you're lucky enough to not have to use much of this money, then you can also withdraw it, pay taxes on it, and use it like another tax advantage retirement account. But this is a really great option that's out there right now, so if you have the opportunity to do it, do it. I only had a couple years to use it. It's just sitting there. We're not touching it right now. I can't contribute any more money to mine. But we know if there's ever a medical problem, we have money right there ready to go that we don't even have to worry about. Real estate's another way to save. Lots of different ways to do this. I know there's a bunch of real estate people in the room and people who have rental properties. We are not the people to ask about that. That was not our method of savings. We are index fund investors mostly.
I was a negative investor in real estate. If you see the spike there on the right, that was the peak home real estate prices. That was in February of 2007. I'll give you one guess what year I bought my home, what month I bought my home.
Yeah.
If you guessed February of 2007, you are exactly right.
Yes.
The moment I set foot in that depreciating asset, it was never worth what I paid for it. In fact, to this day, it's still not worth what I paid.
It's getting closer, though. So we sold the houses 3 years ago. This is another thing that there are ups and downs, but over the long run, in many scenarios, this can actually be a good way of investing money and saving money. But again, long run. So if you're going to have to sell for some reason in a down market, this is a way you could actually lose money, hence what happened to Steve. But this could mean home bases, rental properties, flipping houses, commercial real estate, whatever that means. There are tax benefits involved with many of these. So if this is something that's interesting to you, find some of the other folks in the audience who are making this work, because I would like to learn from them, because it's pretty cool. There are other investments as well, depending on what your goals are, what your why is. ESAs, or education IRAs, and 529 plans are great tax advantage ways of saving for children's education, much better than putting it into a savings account or a brokerage account, if you're sure the kid's going to use it for education, because there are a lot of fees involved if they don't. But that is something to think about if that is one of your major whys, what you're trying to save money for. And then there's businesses and crowdsourcing. Not only can you buy a business, like we just heard about, but you could also crowdsource in a business or with an entrepreneur. There are websites kind of like Kickstarter where people will put up their businesses, look for funding, and different people will contribute different percentages of the business.
Yeah, basically you invest as a group of people into a business or real estate. So you're not shouldering the entire real estate project or the entire business project. If the business or real estate makes money, you collectively as a group make money. But if it doesn't, if it falls flat, you're not going to lose your life savings, because you may have only invested $1,000, $2,000, whatever that happened to be. A very small amount, just to get your feet wet in that kind of investing domain. All right, we've talked about a lot of graphs and math and financials.
Oh, so exciting right before lunch, I know.
So let's take a deep breath, and I'll let you look at a couple of really pretty faces.
Not ours, over there. Go over there.
These are our dogs. Patty's the small one, Penny is the big one. I got this photo out in the middle of Colorado. That's one of the things that we love about RVing. probably the most. We get to go wherever we want and be self-contained for that period of time.
Yeah.
And these girls definitely like doing that. So,
deep breath.
Dogs.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we've talked about figuring out your why you want to save money, which can be the hardest part. Figuring out all the different ways you can save money, all these different savings methods. Now, how much can you save? You can't know that unless you track your spending. This is like the foremost thing that needs to be done before you can really feel like you're financially fit or have a good handle on your finances. Now, tracking your spending means no guilt. We're not talking about budgeting yet, people. We're talking about tracking your spending. This is just knowing where every dollar you spend goes. That's what we're talking about. What categories you use? That's up to you guys. This is creating your own rules. We're going to do the same thing with budgeting. We'll show you what we've used, but you need to do what works for your family and for your situation. This is a lot easier than it used to be. You don't have to worry about checkbook registers or having a notebook or even those Excel spreadsheets, which are totally my jam, but I know not everybody loves. There are other options out there. Your own bank may have great options where they list out everything you've spent and you can put in other credit cards and be able to see everything in one place. There are also other online options, including Personal Capital and Mint.
Yeah, now Mint is a more of a in-the-weeds budgeting, day-to-day, that kind of tracking. And it's free to use, and it's a very sophisticated budgeting-specific application.
Yes.
We also use and recommend Personal Capital, which looks at your financial picture from a little bit of a higher level, so your investments, your diversification. It does have a budgeting component, but quite frankly, if budgeting is what you're after,
Mint is
use
slightly
Mint.
better. Yeah.
If you want a more high-level picture of your investments and your net worth and your general overall wealth, that's where Personal Capital comes in. That is also free, although, word to the wise, Personal Capital makes their money through the use of personal finance advisors. So if you do sign up for an account, you might get a phone call or 2 or 10 or 100. And you just have to pretty much be like we did, strong with them. We are not in the interest, or we have no interest in doing business with your financial advisors.
We just want to see your
future. Leave us alone.
Yeah,
and
it all works out
they
great.
will.
So these are online. You just enter your information. They can't actually access any of your accounts, but they can see what's been charged, what's been spent, and you can then categorize everything really easily. What else makes things categorizing really easy?
Credit cards.
Credit cards.
How many here have credit cards in your wallet right now? Right now.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't see a lot of hands go up. Okay, fair enough. We like credit cards because, like we just said, it makes it easy to track your spending.
You don't have to keep every receipt for everything you spent using cash, which is
That's
if you're
right.
really tracking your spending, what you need to do if you're spending with a lot of cash.
And credit cards get a bad rap, but there's actually a lot of perks with credit cards, like the cash back at the end of the year, your travel rewards, like free flights and hotels and things like that. There's also other benefits that a lot of people don't realize their credit cards offer, like warranties. So if you go to Best Buy or whatever and you buy a new hard drive and they try to sell you a warranty, your credit card might actually warranty that hard drive already simply because you used that credit card.
Yep.
So if you're not aware of what your credit card offers in terms of perks like that, like outside of cashback, outside of travel stuff, the extra perks, which a lot of credit cards offer, if you don't know that, take a look because you may have extra protection that you might be paying extra for elsewhere.
Now, the credit cards get a bad rap for a reason. Obviously, there is a lot of credit card debt.
That's like negative compounding.
Yes. Remember how we talked about how compound interest is magic? Negative compound interest is evil. Real. It's money's working against you. You're pretty much sitting there, and instead of you sit there and your money grows on its own, you sit there and you're losing more and more as you sit in your seat.
Easy availability of credit lulls people into a sense that just because you have the credit limit on your card, you should or could spend that amount of money. So the way that we look at credit cards is we only use credit cards purely as a convenience, not to spend money that we don't have.
Yes, and
so
that
if we don't have that money to pay off that credit card that month, we do not use it.
Yeah, and that is what an emergency savings account is good for. And one of the reasons why we put it out there, because like we said, if your rig breaks down and you really need to get it fixed and you put it on your credit card, that money needs to come from somewhere. And it would be better not to have it be debt that's building against you in the background. Okay, now I am going to talk about the bad B word. We're going to talk about budget. And this got cut off a little bit, but I'll talk about some of it. So this was actually a budget we used for a little while on the West Coast, as you can tell by the $400 monthly camping fee. That was easily done on the West Coast because we boondock a lot, but on the East Coast, our budget's a little higher this year. Just going to throw that out there. So what categories do you use when you budget? We're creating our own rules, people. Whatever works for you. Our categories are things like camping fees, propane, diesel, pets, because our dogs are obviously important. And we have a category down there that you can't see some stuff over there called fun money.
That's my favorite category.
That's his favorite category.
By far.
And we'll talk about that there in a second. But these are the kinds of categories we use, and then you can see that we break it up into both monthly and yearly amounts. Why? Because some things make sense as a monthly budget. Spend $500 on groceries. Monthly budget. That's how much we spend. That's how much we have to spend. But some things don't, like that propane, $30 a month. In the summer, we may not fill up on propane. In the winter, we may be filling up 2 or 3 times. And so that's where that yearly amount comes in. Yearly, we expect to spend $360. So split up over the course of the entire year, that's about $30 a month. That's giving me an idea of how much money we have to have in our accounts for those, different months. Because as entrepreneurs, you probably don't get the same paycheck every month. You might have really great months, and you may have some not so great months. And there's also those spending months. You may have those really great months for spending where you're doing really good on your savings and your budget, and then you may have those months where, the insurance bills come in and the membership fees come in and everything like that. And so being able to know that you're going to have the money available to live and not go into any more debt means figuring that out over the course of the entire year and making sure you have the money available as you go for any of those ups and downs, different months. Now that fun money category, which you can't see underneath that, is the subcategories, which it would have said fun money, $400 a month, which is a lot because right now we're doing pretty well and the market's doing good and we're making extra income and so we can have more fun, which he loves. But when we don't have that, our fun money goes down pretty quickly. But under that, we have Steve's fun money, my fun money. So that's money that we can spend on things we want that the other person really could care less about. Restaurants, alcohol, entertainment, even like parking in city streets when we're traveling. That all goes under fun because those are things that are non-essential, but things we like to do. That's
right. The good majority of our fun money happens to be alcohol. But that makes us happier people too. So it feeds back into itself.
Yes.
And
so what we were saying about...
We think it works.
Yeah, what we were saying about flexibility is that we group all of that into one category because if one month we want to go to a concert and it's going to cost us $300 to go for that month, well then we just know those other categories kind of have to be a little bit lighter. We may not be able to buy any beer for a little while in order to make up for that concert. So you can be as flexible or as rigid with a budget as you need to be.
Debt.
You probably should do debt.
I could, but I'm going to save my audience the torture. Debt. Generally, debts are bad, right? In most
general.
cases. There are cases where debts can be good, like taking out a loan to start a business, or maybe a mortgage for a house that appreciates, or your student loans for a marketable degree that you end up making a lot of money with. So there are exceptions to this, but in general, the idea is to become debt-free.
Yes, especially since, like we said, debts pretty much mean that magic is working against you, and as you sit in your chair, your money is actually, you're losing more money.
And there's 2 schools of thought when it comes to paying off your debt. The first one is called the debt avalanche method, which prioritizes your debts based on interest. So you will still pay at least the bare minimums on each debt. But your 10% interest debt, if that's your highest interest, will be paid off first. Like any extra money that you would have to throw towards your debt, prioritize that high interest debt first, and then slowly make your way down to the lower interest debts. Because the idea is you're paying more extra money, more in interest, through a debt that is higher naturally.
Yeah. So you're going to start with the biggest, highest interest first and work your way down. The other method is more of a small victory method.
Yeah, it's called the debt snowball method. And if you visually think about a snowball, it builds as it rolls downhill. And think of the snowball as your motivation for paying off debt. So you prioritized your easy debts first.
The smallest.
So even if there's a 1.5 interest debt, very small, you're not paying a lot, but it's only $1,500, for example. You could just get rid of that debt, make it easy, give yourself a sense of accomplishment, and
roll
give
that
you
into
some
the next
motivation
one.
for the next easiest debt, and then the next easiest debt, and then you just keep going from there until you get to that hard debt that you know is going to be hard, but you have all of these accomplishments under your belt that might actually just keep you going.
And you're used to doing it at that point,
yes,
too.
Yes, exactly. So it becomes more part of your lifestyle that way.
Yes. So for some people in this room, paying off debt will be a higher priority than, say, saving for in that brokerage account and towards that future. It's just all about your why, and there's a reason why it's called personal finance. Everyone's situation is very different, and we're just trying to give you as many different things to know about to get you on the right track as possible. Okay, we've talked about figuring out your why, all the different ways you can save, that you need to track your spending, figure out some kind of budget, whatever works for you, and that will tell you how much you can save and make sure you have it if you're sticking to your budget. So now you have money that you can save and give more of a purpose to and go towards that big why.
So
In what
do you do
order
first?
should you do this? And this is, again, where the personal part of personal finance comes in.
Yes, we highly recommend if you do not have an emergency fund, start one immediately.
If it's $10 a month, it doesn't matter. Having something put aside that you don't touch for any other reason but emergencies is a really good idea to have. It is the very first step towards being financially free because, like we said, something happens that finances is not your first thought.
That's right. And once you have a comfortable emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months, or whatever, quite frankly, you feel comfortable with, then you can move on to some of your longer-term savings accounts, like your retirement accounts, things like that.
Especially if your company has a match, because like we said, if you're not matching, you're saying, no thanks, don't need more money, we're good. After that, it could be debt paying off, it could be retirement accounts, it could be brokerage accounts, it could be saving in a savings account for that RV you wanted, or whatever it is. Just make sure you sit there and figure out in what order is your priority in saving money, because knowing that means you know where to put it. And don't make it hard on yourself. Put yourself first.
That's right. So there's a pay yourself first idea in the personal finance community, and that basically means with every paycheck, you are funding your savings accounts first. All of your savings stuff just comes out first.
Yep.
So you never see that money. It's automated. Your 401ks is being contributed to your Roth.
It's not
if
tempting.
That's what's available to you, your brokerage accounts. All of that is just happening automatically after every paycheck, and then you just see what's left over.
Yes, which
and
is what you need for your budget.
Yes,
so
and that's the amount that you can kind of play around with and massage so it maximizes your happiness, but also contributes to your future goals.
And your future happiness is still important. Okay, the 4% rule. You may be asking, you're considered early retirees or at least financially free. How much money does that mean? What does it take for this to happen?
Basically, how do you know when you've reached the point of financial freedom? There's one very, significant rule or foundation in the personal finance community. It's called the Trinity 4% study, or the 4% rule. What this is basically 4 professors from Trinity University got together, and their goal was to come up with the average percentage of your net worth, of your assets, that you could spend on a yearly basis.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, assuming that you're not going to earn a dime from that point on, and assuming that the majority of your money is invested and it's not in a checking account or under your mattress. And through the stock market ups and downs, to include the Great Depression, to include recessions, through all the ups and downs, 4% was the number that these professors came back with. So about 4% of your net worth you can spend while standing a reasonably good chance of never running out of money. So to make the math easy, if you wanted to spend, let's say, $40,000 a year, you would need about $1 million in net worth to make that spending happen if you were to follow this particular guideline.
Yes, and we use this as a foundation. We sit down every year and look to see how is the market doing, how are we doing. We retired from our careers, but we make money from the road because it's fun, and we're not just going to sit in our rocking chairs and rock. I mean, we're not quite at that stage yet. And so we do things that are fun for us where we still make money, and so that contributes to how much we spend, what percentage we spend every year of our assets. Another way to look at this is whatever you spend in a year, which you'll know if you track your spending, you need 25 times that in your net worth in order to reach this 4% rule. Some of our big questions: healthcare and kids. Healthcare. What are we going to do about healthcare?
We don't.
No, yes, we do.
Well, okay. We stay out of health insurance.
Yes, so
like many of you RVers, you probably heard of Liberty Health Share. So right now, that works for us.
Yes.
Because we're young, we're relatively healthy. We don't need to go to the doctor all that often.
Yeah.
So for us, that helps keep the costs down, and we don't have the luxury of choosing a primary care physician because we are full-time RVers.
Yes.
So we can't just go back to our home state if we get sick.
And Liberty Health Share is not for everyone, but it is an option that is out there. The other options are obviously the traditional healthcare system, which if you're not working for a company, you would go to whatever your domicile state is, look at their marketplace, and pick a plan off of that. What is that going to look like in 25 years? Can anybody tell me what that's going to look like next year? Like, we have no idea. So there are a few other options. There's the health shares, which are popping up now. There's also medical tourism, where you can go to Mexico or Thailand or places like that, where we've known many people to actually go and do their entire pregnancy in Thailand. So
I will say we do not have dental insurance,
no,
but we go down to Mexico every other year on a family vacation.
Yeah.
And just last year, I got a teeth cleaning, a full-service teeth cleaning, $25, 30 minutes, I was out the door.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So there are options out there right now. What's it going to look like in the future? We don't know. All you can really do is set yourself up right, which is what we're talking about financially anyway. Save towards those HSAs. There's ways you can take money out of your Roth IRAs before the traditional time, also for medical expenses. There are options out there. Also, obviously, try to keep yourself as healthy as possible. Maintain good, healthy habits now so that your future is better. That's all we can really say about healthcare, because we would have to be psychic to really know what's going to happen there. Kids. We don't have kids, so that made it easier.
We do have dogs. We do have dogs.
Yeah, but it's a very different thing. So a lot of people will ask us, is financial freedom possible if we have kids? The answer is absolutely yes. We know lots and lots of people with kids who are either financially free in the terms of they actually quit their jobs and they both stay home with the kids, or they have significantly changed their lifestyles in order to be with their kids more by gaining some sense of financial freedom and having their financial lives in order. So can you do it? Yes. Will it be harder? Yes, because you will most likely need more money because you have more mouths to feed. But it is possible for everyone. Okay, something we'd really like to get across: money is not the boogeyman. I know it's scary to talk about. We actually probably haven't said our numbers yet. That example he said with the 40,000 needing $1 million, we are right about there now, but when we pulled the plug, it was more like 900,000.
$870,000 in net worth when we retired.
Yes.
We are completely transparent.
Yes.
So after this discussion, if you have any questions, please come up to us. Yes. We are absolutely open books.
We are higher now because the market has been good, but obviously because we're index and fund investors, when the market is not so good, our net worth will also go down and our lifestyle will have to change for that reason. But whatever that yearly amount you want to spend, that's what really matters for you. Everyone's story is different. But please, please, please talk about money. Talk about money with your spouse, with your friends, with your kids. Money is the second cause for divorce after infidelity because people don't talk about it. And that's why we're here. Our story may not relate to you, but just knowing what's out there and the options you have available to make sure that not only are you free in lifestyle, but also free in truth, your life is free through financial freedom is a really good goal, and a good thing to know is out there.
One way to make that easier is to talk about money in the terms of what it can provide.
Your why.
So before we did this, before we quit our jobs and hit the road, we would walk our dogs through our neighborhood every single night, and on that walk, every single night, we would talk about our future, what we wanted to do, the things we wanted to see, where we wanted to go, how we wanted to live, and putting it in those terms, hopes and dreams. I mean, eventually, yes, you do have to translate that into money, how much that's going to cost. But keeping that in the forefront of your mind every day, or at least as often as you can, is really going to help you stay motivated to put the pieces into place to make those whys a reality.
Exactly. And remember, whys may not be the same for everyone, so we get asked a lot, how do I get my spouse on board with this? You don't, if that's what you're trying to do. You need to figure out their why and make sure that everyone's working towards it, because not spending money now is not fun. We get that. But it means that the future can be as fun as the present, and that's what we're aiming for. Okay, so takeaways. In our opinion, the ultimate YOLO is financial freedom because you are free to live the life you want and not have to worry about money, ever. And to do that, you need to set yourself up right. You need to track your spending, have some kind of budget, whatever that means to you, give your money a purpose, and make your money work for you and not against you. We highly recommend prioritizing an emergency fund and figuring out your why, because that's what's going to keep you going.
Did anybody learn something?
Hopefully. We didn't just bore you to death,
anything
right?
Anything at all? Anything? All right. Boom.